Hello. When we left off with chapter 37, Maniac was performing all these feats, all these amazing tasks to get Russell and Piper to agree to go to school each week. And when we left off, they dared him to go to the East End as his next feat to perform. Chapter 38. The witnesses, there were twice 15 this time, went with him, but only as far as Hector Street. They halted on the curb. He crossed the street and went on to the East End alone. Piper megaphoned after him, "Maniac, come back! We was just kidding. You don't have to." Maniac just waved and went on. He knew he should be feeling afraid of these East Enders, these so-called black people, but he wasn't afraid. It was himself he was afraid of any trouble that he might cause just by being there. It was the day of the worms. You know, that first almost warm after the rainy night day in April when you bolt from your house and find yourself in a world of worms? They were as numerous here in the East End as they had been in the West. The sidewalks, the streets, the very places where they didn't belong. Forlorn, marooned on concrete and asphalt with no place to burrow. He thought of the worms as April's orphans. Once, when he was little in Hollidaysburg, he had gone along with his toy wheelbarrow, carefully lifting them with the borrowed kitchen fork until the wheelbarrow was full, and then he dumped them into Mr. Snavely's compost pile. And as sure as the worms followed the rains, the kids followed the worms. West End, East End, they all poured from their houses onto the cool, damp sidewalks. And if they gave the worms any notice, it was only when they squashed one underfoot. And so, as Maniac moved through the East End, he felt the presence of not one, but two populations, both occupying the same territory, yet each unmindful of the other, one yelping and playing and chasing and laughing, the other lost and silent and dying by the millions. So that's what he is thinking of, the worms, and hoping he didn't cause any trouble in the East End. And then all of a sudden he hears, "Yo, fish belly." Who do you think it is? Maniac snapped to. He glanced at the street sign. He was 4 blocks from Hector, deep in the East End. And Mars Bar came dip-jiving toward him, taller than before, bigger, but still scowling. "Yo, fish, thought you was gone." Maniac turned to face him fully. Mars Bar did not stop until he was inside Maniac's phone booth of space, inches from his face. They locked eyes levelly. Maniac thought, I must be growing too. He said, "Well, I'm back." That scowl fiercened. "Maybe nobody told you, but I'm badder than ever. I'm getting badder every day. I'm almost afraid to wake up in the morning," he leaned in closer, "'cause of how bad I might have got overnight." Maniac smiled and nodded. "Yeah, you're bad, Mars." He gave a sniff. His smile went a little smirky, and then Maniac said, "I'm getting so bad myself, I think I must be half black." Mars Bar's eyes bulged. He backed off. The scowl collapsed and he howled with laughter. His buddies who were hanging back just stared dumbly. As Mars unwound from his laughing fit, he studied Maniac up and down, aware too that Maniac was studying him. When he could speak again, he said, "Still in them raggedy clothes, huh, fish?" He lifted one foot, posed. "I seen you looking. You like them kicks? I just got 'em." Maniac nodded. "Nice." Oh, they were more than nice. They were beautiful. The best, yes, the baddest sneaks he had ever seen. Way better than anything Grayson could have afforded. "I forgot to tell you something else too, fish." "What's that?" asked Maniac. "I'm fast. Faster. I've been working out. Got my new boss kicks." He sprinted in place, arms and legs pistoning into a blur. He stopped. He jabbed a finger at Maniac's nose, pressed it, flattened the soft end of it. "See? Guess you were right. Now at least you got a black nose." He laughed. They both laughed. Everybody laughed. Then Mars turned scowly again, saying, "But you ain't black enough or bad enough to beat the Mars man. We gonna race." How do you think that's going to go? Take a second and think about it. Mars is challenging Maniac to a race in the East End. How do we think this is going to go? The race was set up on Plum Street, the long level block between Ash and Jackson. By the time they were ready, half the kids in the East End were there, from the tiniest pipsqueaks to high schoolers. The little kids ran races of their own from curb to curb. The bigger kids shouldered blasters, means they were holding music up by their ears, and dug into their jeans for money to bet with. For the first time since last fall, mothers opened up windows and leaned out from second stories. Traffic was detoured from both ends of the block. No one could find string for the finish line first, so a second story mother dropped down a spool of bright pink thread. Another problem was the start. First, they had to find chalk to draw the starting line. Well, when they did, nobody could seem to draw it straight. The result was a stack of starting lines creeping up the street till someone just finally brought out a yardstick and did it right. The next problem came when the starter, Bump Gilliam, who was also Mars Bar's best pal, called, "Get ready!" And someone in the crowd yelled, "That ain't what you say. You say take your mark." Well, everybody jumped into it then. There was shoving and jawing and almost a fist fight over the proper way to start a race. Finally, there was a compromise, and Bump called, "Get ready on your mark," at which point somebody else called, "Go, Mars," and Bump turned and snarled, "Shut up! When the starter starts, there's no noise." So naturally, someone else called, "Smoke 'em, Mars," and then "Waste 'em, Mars, do 'em, barman." And they might still be calling to this day, had not a single voice separated itself from the others, yelling, "Burn 'em, Magee." It was hands down, laughing and pointing from his perch on the roof of a car. So hands down, at least Maniac has one fan rooting for him in this race. So Bump jumped into the let up. All right, get set, go. All right, make your predictions. Who's going to win this race, Maniac or Mars? Even as the race began, even after it began, Maniac wasn't sure how to run it. Well, naturally, he wanted to win, or at least do his best, and all of his instincts told him that. But there were other considerations: whom he was racing against, and where, and what the consequences might be if he won. Think about that. These were heavy considerations, heavy enough to slow him down, until the hysterical crowd and the sight of Mars Bar's sneaker bottoms and the boiling of his own blood ignited his afterburners, and before you could say, "Burn him, Magee," he was ahead, the pink thread bobbing in his sights. But he never saw his body break the thread. He only saw the face of Mars Bar, straining, gasping, unbelieving, losing. Okay, now you have to visualize that. It took me a second to figure it out too. He won, but he said he never even saw his body cross the pink thread. He only saw the face of Mars Bar losing. So how would he have to be facing in order to make that happen? They went crazy. They went wild. They went totally bananas. Did you see him, man? He turned around. Yeah, man, he ran backwards. He beat him going backwards. Oh. Mars Bar tried. He shoved Bump. "Yeah, you started too fast. I wasn't ready." Then he shoved the thread holders. "You moved up so's I couldn't win. I was gaining on him." He shoved Maniac. "You bumped me. You got a false start. You cheated." But his protests drowned in the pandemonium. "Why did I do it?" was all Maniac could think. He hadn't even realized he did it until he crossed the line, and he regretted it instantly. Wasn't it enough just to win? Why did he have to disgrace his opponent as well by running backwards? Had he done it deliberately to pay Mars Bar back for all his nastiness, to show him up and shut him up once and for all? His only recollection was a feeling of sheer joy, joyful exuberance, himself in celebration shouting "Amen" in the Bethany church, bashing John McNabb's fastballs out of sight, and dancing the polka with Grayson. Maybe it was that simple. After all, who asks otters why they toboggan down mud banks? They just do it. But still, Maniac thought, that didn't make it any less stupid or any less of a rotten thing for him to do. The hatred in Mars Bar's eyes was no longer for just some white kid in the East End. The hatred was now for Jeffrey Magee, period. The crowd surged with him as he made his way westward. It wasn't clear whether they were glad or not that he had won, only that they had seen something to set them off. They jostled and jammed and high-fived, and for everyone who called him White Lightning, 2 more challenged him to a race. "Right here, baby, you and me. We're going to see who turns his back on who this time." And Maniac just kept on moving, embarrassed, wishing he could just break out and sprint for the West End, wishing he could duck into the Beals house and be sanctuary there and not fear them getting hurt. And just about then, miraculously, two little hands were worming their way into his, two familiar little voices squealing, "Maniac! Maniac!" It was Hester and Lester. He snatched them up, one in each arm. He was on Sycamore Street, and there was the house, the door opening, Amanda and Mrs. Beale smiling to beat the band. So he's back with the Beals. So the first time I read this book, when I got to that part, I thought, oh, I'm so glad he ended up back with the Beals. That's where I wanted him to end up all along. But then I realized we're just about to start chapter 39, and there are this much more to go, 46 chapters. So I don't think he's just going to walk into the Beals house and we'll live happily ever after now. That's what I was hoping, but it seems like there's a long way to go for us to find that out. All right, let's see chapter 39. During the night, March doubled back and grabbed April by the scuff of the neck and flung it another week or two down the road. There's more personification with the weather. When Maniac slipped silently from the house at dawn, the only way he'd ever managed to get away, March pounded with cold, nasty paws. But Maniac wasn't minding. The reunion had been ecstatic and tearful and nonstop happy, and inside he felt pure July. He was half a block up Sycamore before he stopped tiptoeing. So he just spent the night and left. Minutes later, he crossed Hector. The streets were dry now. Hours later, Russell and Piper spotted him 3 blocks off. "Maniac, you're alive! We thought they got you. Yeah, we thought they slit your throat. Yeah, we thought they strangled you and pulled your tongue out. We thought they chopped your head off and boiled you. Yeah, and boiled you. And drunk your blood. Yeah, drunk your blood. And drunk your brains. Yeah, wait, you don't drink brains, you moron meatball. Yeah, you do. Brains are like milkshakes, like Dairy Queen. You can drink them with a straw. You can hear them sloshing if you shake your head hard enough. Here, listen. Hey, get off my head. Hey, help." And then they were off and running. Russell and Piper. Maniac couldn't help laughing at them. In spite of their twisted, ludicrous impressions of the East Enders, the concern and the tears in their eyes had been genuine. They had really missed him, and they had really been afraid for him. 2 houses away, he could hear the thump, almost feel it, and Father George McNabb's voice. "Lay him down easy, I said. Easy," followed by son John. "This easy enough?" Thump. Thump was followed by a string of curses from George McNabb that fried the cold morning like an egg. What do you think that thump was? What do you think they're supposed to lay down easy? Do you remember? The living room was hazy with dust. At the back of the dining room, they were bringing in the cinder blocks. Remember those big cement blocks? George and John and a handful of cobras lugging and grunting them in from the backyard and dumping them on the floor. Thump. "Hey, kid!" George McNabb was pointing through the haze. 3 months, and he still didn't know Maniac's name. Maniac had been living there for 3 months. "Get your lily hide over here. Start lugging these." Maniac waved. "Later, gotta go," and he shut the door and headed up the street. Maniac thought, so they were really doing it. He had heard them planning it for weeks, making drawings, buying or stealing cement, trowels, a level, a pillbox, or a fort, they called it. Once it was done, they'd be ready. Let the revolt begin. Let the rebels, as they called the East Enders, come. Let them bust through those newly installed bars over the plywood on the window. Let them bust through the steel door. They'll find themselves staring down the barrel of a little surprise. They squabbled over what should the surprise be? Uzi, AK-47, bazooka? "Why?" Maniac asked Giant John one day. "Why what?" "Why are you doing all this?" "To get ready." "What else?" "What do you think is going to happen?" Maniac asked. "What's going to happen?" Giant John swatted a squad of roaches from the kitchen table and sat down. "What's going to happen is one of these days they're going to revolt." "Who says?" "Who cares who says? You think they're going to make an announcement?" Maniac tried to picture Amanda and Hester and Lester and Bow Wow storming the barricades. He shook his head. "When's all this supposed to happen?"